The time has finally come after many, many years. After so many requests by people so many years ago to watch RWBY, I am finally watching RWBY. It only took them making an animated series by Shaft, so there you go. It took a while, honestly, unfortunately, but yes, I'm finally watching RWBY. Yes, the Shaft version, not the other one, but yes, this is a long time coming. This is an actual huge surprise of a series to come out, and we just got the first 3 episodes dropped really early, and it completely threw my schedule out of whack, but I really wanted to check out this series and give my thoughts on it, so yeah. Without further ado, let's jump into it. We have RWBY Ice Queendom, a series being done by Shaft. Of course, this is based off of the series RWBY that was done by and created by Monty Oum, who has unfortunately passed away. There's a lot of really big names behind this one, including Kindro Okada, who of course is known for doing March Comes In Like a Lion. Ubakata To is going to be doing the actual series composition and script writing for the series, and they are of course known for doing Marduk Scramble, as well as Psychopaths Season 2 and 3, as well as Fafnir Dead Aggressor. Character designs by Hook, and I noted at some point in the episode they decided to show Black Rock Shooter on a television screen, so that's probably why that was there, is because Hook was in this. And yes, oddly enough, Jinrobuchi apparently is involved as planning an animation concept, which I know is creating a lot of heat because people believe that they keep putting Jinrobuchi's name on things, but if what plan an animation concept is in what I'm thinking it is, because I've never heard that term before, my assumption is that's probably going to be more involved in the areas of combat and stuff, which, let's be honest, Jinrobuchi is very well known for some really crazy animation and combat sequences. Just go check out Thunderbolt Fantasy and you'll see what I mean. So I'm kind of assuming that's what it means, which would be really, really cool. But just know that he's not involved with the story or anything like that. We're not going to have every character dying every episode. So, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I've never watched RWBY before, so anyways, let me jump right into my first thoughts of this series. First and foremost, again, I have never watched the original series, and I'm probably going to butcher certain story concepts, and I'm going to miss things that you probably know about from the original series. Of course, it seems like stuff is being skipped already, as I went to go check out the port scene because I heard somebody say they didn't animate it, and I ended up noting a couple things that were missing as I was skimming through to find it, including things like apparently Juan is not supposed to be there, I guess, is the big key thing there. But that's something they might get into eventually, so I'm not going to get into any of that stuff. But yeah, for those that are like me, that are just getting into this series now, this takes place in a world where these monsters show up known as Grimms. And mankind is kind of losing hope, and at some point, their desires to, live on, they create dust, and this dust is what they use to fight back against the Grimms. And at some point, we jump forward and we meet RWBY. RWBY is unfortunately not going to be able to get into this Beacon Academy, but her sister has been accepted. And while RWBY is excited for her sister, she is a little upset because she does want to become a huntress just like her mother was. We'll cut forward and RWBY is trying to find a present for her sister to celebrate her getting accepted. While RWBY is at this market, and so happens this market actually sells dust, these robbers show up to rob the place of all of its dust. Well, RWBY quickly jumps into action, beats the crap out of all of them. One of them flees the place, and as he's fleeing, she's trying to stop him. This lady that actually works at the Beacon Academy shows up and helps her fight off these guys. While this lady, Glinda, is obviously very mad that RWBY did this, like she's not supposed to be stepping out of her place, the big head of the Beacon Academy ends up showing up and says, hey, I want you to come join the Beacon Academy. So she ends up getting brought in just like her sister. And so thus starts RWBY's life at the Beacon Academy, training to become a huntress. She quickly meets Weiss, who is this snobby girl from this rich family which actually produces the dust. Blake, who is a former member of the White Fangs, which the White Fangs are essentially as a terrorist group that is attacking like different movements of dust. And Yang, like I said earlier, who is RWBY's sister. And like most academy training places these days, what wouldn't be complete without day one on the way to the academy training session? And yes, they get thrown out into a forest and have to survive there against Grimms. And this is technically where a lot of the students of this academy are kind of assigned to their teams. Even though nobody really knows each other, and in a lot of cases, like with RWBY and Wise, they don't really get along. This is that point which is kind of forcing them to team up in order to overcome things. And yes, technically you have RWBY, Weiss, Blake, and Yang team up together to fight off these Grimm. There was 2 other story segments, one being John, who was inflicted by this Nightmare Grimm during their whole event in the forest. And this Nightmare Grimm pretty much feeds, it's a Grimm that gets inside of your mind and feeds off of your aura. And your aura is almost like mana or ether. It's like this thing that's within you that you can control to shield yourself and produce power. And since he didn't really know how aura worked, which again I mentioned earlier is a story segment that they might tell later on, the thing didn't grow very strong, so they were able to defeat it pretty easily. They had to go into his mind and actually fight it off. And the second story segment was really around Team RWBY, Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, and the idea that Weiss doesn't like that RWBY is the leader. Blake is, of course, a former White Fang, and she wants to keep that a secret, but then people find out. And then Yang's just trying to keep everybody together, let's be honest. And that eventually turns into this big port fight, and a lot of talk about what Blake is, her race, and how Weiss sees them as evil because her family, she's actually have to deal with people being killed by those terrorists. So let's get into my thoughts on this series. I've talked enough about what it's about. Let's get into my thoughts on the series. I really love this so far. I'm surprisingly entertained by this show so far, and I really do think it's because it's technically getting a sort of anime treatment, whereas before it was something that I was never really drawn to. Yes, I really do love a lot of the animation fight scenes that Montiom did with the series, and I think they really well captured that in this adaptation. Now, let me get the animation out of the way. I really do think, for the most part, this show looks really good, and a lot of the fight scenes are absolutely fantastic. I will say that it seems like some fight scenes are getting a lot more treatment than others. It seems like almost if the style of the show itself shifts when it goes into some really hyper animation stuff. And that is a little bit disjointing. Like sometimes suddenly out of nowhere, like there's a lot of shading happening and the characters are going crazy, and then it goes back to being very flat looking anime style. So I think a lot of the out of action scenes, it looks really flat, but when it gets into some really incredible action scenes, it seems like they put in that extra effort to really bring out, I guess, the dimensional nature of the characters. It does look like there was some use of CGI, but it was very well hidden. But yeah, overall, really loving the animation so far. The fight with RWBY in the streets was really fantastic, and then jump into the fight with the bird looked absolutely incredible. A lot of the scenes with Weiss and her backstory and stuff, it seems like Weiss is very much a focus of this. I guess the Ice Queendom thing is probably where that's at, but a lot of the fight scenes with her first initial trial that her father gave her, and then jumping into the classroom scene, just looks absolutely incredible. They are doing a phenomenal job on a lot of these fight scenes. And I think that's something that's extremely necessary with this property, because if you ask most people what drew them into the original RWBY was what Monty Ohm did with his action scenes. Some people didn't care for much of the story outside of that. It was just these really cool fight scenes and a lot of the choreography that he did with his fight scenes. And so I would assume that's something that Shaft is taking very serious, like we need to pull this off. That's why I was mentioning earlier the idea of Genrobuchi being this planned animation concept, is that might be what they were bringing him in for, because again, if you look at something like Thunderbolt Fantasy, that's kind of what he's known for. Thunderbolt Fantasy is about puppets. They're Chinese puppets, but yet they're really, I mean, that was what I loved about it. They're really amazing action scenes. And I think that that's probably why they brought him on board, and that's probably what he's doing. Which does make me a little sad in seeing certain scenes like the port fight being cut out, because as I went out of my way to go watch that scene, it was incredible, and I would have loved to have seen Shaft animate that. I mean, Sun, the guy they ran into in the third episode, he's got like this weird polearm gun thing with a chain, and so he's doing this cool thing where he's, you know, swinging it around him and it's shooting off bullets. It's just absolutely cool looking, and I would have loved to see that anime. Maybe Sun will show up later and we can see him fully animated, but for now, like I said, really cool action scenes. They're doing a great job of that. Characters, I'm loving them so far. I really didn't think I would like the characters, but I'm really interested in them so far, and I'm kind of surprised by that, honestly. Ruby's way cute. She's fun. She's got that innocent nature of herself. She's technically the youngest because she's getting into the Beacon Academy 2 years prior. At least she jumped 2 years. She's got a great seiyuu I'm sure most people are already recognizing her as Yor from Spy X Family, but yes, I've always loved her seiyuu. She's just got kind of like I said, an innocent, childish nature, which is so funny to see how Weiss acts, because Weiss is let's face it, the snobby rich kid. The kid that got everything she wanted handed to her. Now she wants to do her own thing and go to the Beacon Academy and become a huntress. And she still has this mindset that she's better than everybody else and that everything should be given to her. She should be the leader. She earned this. She earned everything. And everybody else is, under her. And so she conflicts a lot with RWBY, which is funny because technically she's acting like a child doing that. And that's essentially what Peter Port kind of points out to her when she, says that she should be the leader. I will say the final segment of the third episode really was a little bit off-putting because it seems like she's upset because she has a child as a leader. She has a former White Fang in her team, and she doesn't know what to do. It almost gave off this idea that she just decides at some point, you know what? I'm just not going to think about it. Like, her final choice is like, whatever, I'm just not going to think about it. Like, I'm just going to give up on thinking about that stuff. But, of course, we're going to see that she's going to fall right back into it because it shows that it seems like she has a nightmare within her, too, which is probably going to be worse because she knows how to control her aura, whereas Joan didn't, and now it's going to affect her even more because it's taken time to build up. So while I'm frustrated by Wise, I do see that she's going to be that character that pays off in the end because she's going to switch at some point. She's going to realize, I need to stop acting like this princess girl. And she's going to go through this really nightmarish thing, obviously. Nightmarish thing. Blake, I'm okay on so far. She's definitely awesome. I do like her character design. I think she's probably going to be one of the ones that's going to have the most conflict because she's technically from a race of people that seems, at least all accounts so far, seem to indicate that they are kind of a race of people that have been pushed down a lot by the company that Weiss's family is a part of. And she chose to eventually become a part of the White Fang, which were originally to help bridge between the humans and their race, and they eventually turned into basically terrorists. So I'll be interested to see how they develop her character. And Yang's just kind of there. So far, Yang's just there. Yang just wants to be a big sister. That's really all they've done with her so far. But hopefully, eventually, it's like everybody has these crazy stories. RWBY is like child that became part of the Beacon Academy. She's kind of a fun character. Weiss is a part of this rich family and getting over the fact that she's uppity. Blake is a part of this group that used to be that is terrorist, and then Yang's just there. But it's obviously already hitting on a lot of different types of subjects, like, obviously this very powerful rich family and the control they have to society, the dust, which obviously is a commodity in itself, the Grims, which of course is the ultimate threat, obviously the pure evil concept, whereas everything else sort of has some sort of purpose for some group or whatnot. You already have, yes, subjugated races and, the wars that happen between them and discrimination that's happening. Obviously, Weiss immediately believing that anybody of that race is bad, not just the White Fangs. The idea that the White Fangs used to be a good group of people. So many things are already being hit on, which directly affect the main four casts. So I'm already seeing a lot of development happening here that can get in some really good stuff. So with all that said, I am surprising enough to say it, I'm extremely excited about this series, and I really wasn't coming into it other than the fact that, again, it had a lot of really big names behind it. But I can't wait for more. Have fun in the comment section. There's going to be a lot of spoilers in the comment sections. There's going to be a lot of people that are super Monty Ohm fans that are going to hate the fact that this show exists. There's going to be people that say the animation in the original series was better, that Shaft is doing a terrible job. I just cannot wait to see the comment sections. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode or if you're going to be checking it out. Subscribe if you've not already so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, episode by episode impressions of certain shows throughout the season, as well as reviews. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider supporting us through Patreon. Our tips link in the description below. We also have a super thanks button down there. Your guys' support is what makes this happen, and y'all take care.